Hello and welcome to AutoCAD for Beginners. In this video, I'll explain you about the command array over here and also some extra commands of the section modify like lengthen over here, break, underline over here. So in this video, I'm going to explain you basically 4 commands in total. One is array. There are 3 kinds of array. If you click on the down arrow on this, you can see that there are 3 kinds of array: rectangular array, path array, and polar array. So to explain you the command, I'm just going to have to draw a simple example. Over here, suppose I have these 4 little houses connected to each other, and I want to make a window like this. And I made one window, and I want all of the floors and all of the 4 houses to have the same window. So for that, I'm going to use the command rectangular array. So for that, I just go on this small arrow over here, and I'm going to click on the drop down menu. From here, I'm going to select rectangular array, and it's asking me to select the objects. So I'm just going to select a window over here and press enter. So the moment I pressed enter, you can see that there are 4 columns and 3 rows of the same object that have appeared over here in a grid kind of format. And above here in the home panel, you can see that a new ribbon has been created called the array creation. Over here you can see the type of the array to be a rectangular array, and there's a section for columns in which it says the number of columns are 4. The rows, in which the number of rows is being showed as 4. The levels command is basically used in AutoCAD 3D, and in this particular tutorial we are discussing AutoCAD 2D, so I'm just going to skip this. Properties and close array. Close array just closes this ribbon. So I'm just going to be discussing each of these ribbons one by one. So over here you can see the default number of columns and rows for AutoCAD for the array command is basically 4 and 3. This is the exact number of rows and columns that we're going to need for what I was going to do. Just for your sake, I'm just going to change one of them to say 5, and you can see a new column has appeared over here towards this particular side. I'm just going to press Ctrl plus Z. And over here it shows the distance between the two columns. So I'm just going to show you the distance. So you can see the distance over here is 3600, and if I select this again, it's showing the distance between them to be 3600. This particular distance is between any two similar points in array. So the distance center to center is 3600, the distance corner to this corner is 3600. So that's how it works. And over here you can see the total distance to be 1080. So the distance is 1080 as you saw. So I'm just going to select this once again, and I'm just going to increase the distance to say 3000 or 5000. I guess 5000 will do. No, I'm just going to change it back to 4000. And it's perfect. So in the rows column is particularly similar to the columns over here. You can see there are 3 number of rows. You can increase the number of rows to however you want, and the distance between them over here and the total distance over here. So I'm just going to increase the distance between them to say 3000, and it fits perfectly over here. Now if I exit this array command and I have to select the window over here, any window for example, I just select one object and the whole of the array gets selected, because AutoCAD treats this whole array as one particular object. And you can see that there are various arrows over here in our array. So I'm just going to tell you what different arrows mean. So the first point over here is the small square point in the left side bottom corner. If you select this, it is basically used to move the entire array in different places. This particular arrow, it helps me to increase the distance between two columns I mean. So that's what this does. And this particular arrow, it helps me increase the number of rows. So if I select this and drag my mouse, the number of rows, they keep increasing. Similarly for the columns side, if I select on this particular arrow, it helps me increase the distance between the two columns, and this particular arrow is used to increase the number of columns. This particular point you can see on the top right hand side is basically used to increase both rows and columns simultaneously while keeping the distances which we specified earlier as the same. So this point is basically used to increase the number of rows and columns simultaneously. So I hope you understood what rectangular array is. The second array we're going to be discussing is the polar array right over here. So with that, I'm just going to create another example. So you can see I just create this small triangle kind of a figure with this circle. So polar array is basically used to, if you could select on it, it evenly distribute object copies in a circular pattern around a center point or an axis of rotation. So you can see it's how it's used in creating different copies of a chair around a table. So this is just an example AutoCAD is showing. So I'm just going to select the polar array for now and select these two rectangles and press enter. And for the center, I'm just going to select the center of the circle. As you can see, the AutoCAD has entered default values for everything. The number of items to be 6, the distance between them is 60. Mind you, this distance between them, it's not exactly the distance, it's actually the angle between them, because over here we don't have distance, we have then this distance is measured in angles. So the angle between these two items is basically 60 degrees, and the fill is 360 degrees. That means that the total angle, the total area that all of these objects are covering is 360 degrees. That means it's evenly distributing all these items across the whole circle, across the whole 360 degrees. So if I increase the number of items over here to say 10, the angle between them has decreased to 36 and the fill is still 360 degrees. So if I change the fill to 180 degrees, the angle between them has changed to 20 over here. So if I again change the fill to 360 degrees and I attempt to increase the number of items to 15, the angle between them has changed to 24 and the fill is 360. So that's basically how, if you understood in that, what we increase and what gets decreased. So if you just try this on your own, I guess you'll be able to understand this better. The second part is the rows. The number of rows is presently set to default, which is 1. If I increase the number of rows, let's see what happens. If I increase it to say 3, you can see 3 objects there. There are 3 rows that are being created with the same center point, and they've been distributed along the same circle. The distance between them is set to 1994. You can change the distance over here to say 2000, and the total distance would be obviously 4000 because we have 3 objects. The levels again is used in AutoCAD 3D, so I won't be discussing that. Over here you can see there are also different points and arrows in this particular array. So the center point is basically used to move the whole array to different parts of the workspace. This particular arrow, this particular point is used to increase the distance from the center of the whole array. This particular arrow helps us change the angle between the two objects in an array. These arrows, one of these arrows is used to increase the distance between 2 rows in an array, and this particular arrow helps us increase the number of rows to however you want in your array. So I hope you understood the polar array. Now we are going to discuss the path array. For that, I'm just going to create a path using the command, a new command called spline. Now spline is a command. It's basically used to create curves in your AutoCAD file. It creates curves somewhat like this. So let me just make a curve. So over here you can see I just made a curve using the command spline, and as an object let me just make a circle over here. So the circle over here we have, and we have the path. So now I'm just going to select the small arrow and select the path array. For the object I'm just going to select the circle, and now it's asking me to select the path curve. And the moment I select this path curve, AutoCAD has distributed my object along this curve using default values it already has. You see the number of items to be 30, the distance between them to be 3000, and the number of rows to be 1. So this is a particularly different type of an array. you cannot actually move the array. For example, if you try and select this point, it just basically increases the number of rows for this particular array. It does not change the position of the array. However, if you think that you can just use the move command and move our array, you see AutoCAD has shown me this warning which is telling me that you're moving the array away from its path curve. So that means that the array will lose its associativity with the defining curve, and if you cancel the operation, associativity between the path and the array will be remained. So if I just move this array away from this path curve, it won't be an array anymore, it will change properties. So that's the warning that AutoCAD is trying to give me. And if I select this again, you can increase the distance between these two objects. Now the thing to be noted over here is that the distance between these two objects is along the curve. It's not the shortest distance, it's not the displacement between these two objects, it's actually the distance that is measured along the curve over here. So that's how the path array works. The second thing we're going to be discussing is the command lengthen. And after that, I'm just going to create another example over here. Let me just delete this and I'll just create an example. If you saw, I just used very basic values for us to remember them, and the lengthen command is a pretty self-explanatory command. It lengthens lines or sections that are basically a part of lines, polylines, curves, etc. So the shortcut for lengthen over here is this particular batch, and also you can type the command lengthen from over here. You can see that there are 4 variants of lengthen, namely delta, percent, total, and dynamic. So by default the total command is being selected over here, so I'm just going to use that. Now if you remember, the length of this particular line is 1000 units. If I increase the total length to say 1500 and press enter, and if I go to this object by this particular line, it's just asking me to specify the total length over here. I'm just going to press enter, and if I go to this half of the line is going to lengthen from this point, and if I go to the second half of the line, it's going to lengthen from this side. If you want to shorten the line, you can alternatively use a lesser value. For example, if I just select this and use the command lengthen and use a value like 500, which is a shorter value than the original one, so whichever side I'm going to go, it's just going to shorten the line from that particular side. So this is how the total command works. The second part over here is delta. Now the delta command, it adds that particular value which we will enter to the current length. So let me just try that. I'm going to press DE, and it's asking me to enter delta length. So for example, I'm just going to be typing in 100. Press enter. So whichever side I'll go to the line, if I go to this half of the line, it's going to increase it's going to lengthen the line from this particular half, and I can just keep on clicking it, and it'll just keep on increasing the length. If you want to shorten the line, you can alternatively enter the unit in a negative value. That's just going to shorten a line. The second part over here, the third part over here is percentage. I'm just going to select percentage, and it's asking me to enter the percentage length. Say I choose 70%. So it's just going to reduce the length to 70% of what it originally was. That means it's going to shorten 30% of its length, of its original length. So I'm just, if I select this object, it's decreasing its length from this particular half. If I go to this particular object, it's decreasing the length from this half. So obviously 30% for this line is more than 30% of this line. So that's how the percentage works. If you want to alternatively increase the length, you're gonna have to type, for example, if you want to increase 30%, you're gonna have to type 130 for this command. Now the last variant of lengthen is dynamic. Let's just type that. What the command dynamic does is, it's basically more like stretch. So if I just select this object, wherever I take my cursor, it's going to increase the length to that particular point. So it's basically like stretch. So I hope you understood the various commands of lengthen. The next thing we're going to be discussing, next command that we're going to be discussing is the command break. For that, let me just create a rectangle. For example, we have this particular rectangle over here, and if I select this, we have these 4 points, and we can increase or decrease its sides by stretching these lines over here, these points over here. The command lengthen over here, the command break over here, you can see it has two options. One option is break. It breaks the selected objects between 2 points, and the second is break at a point. So first I'm just going to be discussing the command break. If you select this, it's asking me to select the objects. Now if you see that whatever point that I select the object from, it's breaking that object from that particular point. If I don't want that to happen and I want to reselect my first point, I'm just gonna have to type F, enter, and it's asking me to specify the first point again. Say I want the point to be this particular point, and you see wherever I'm taking my cursor to, it's just breaking the whole polyline to that part. So the second breakpoint is presently, say I want the second point to be this point. Now if I select this object, it's being broken down at these two particular points. So that's what break does. It's basically I basically use the command break to create doors and windows and walls. So it's a pretty easy command and pretty convenient for me. The second part of break is break at a point. So if I select this, it's asking me to select the object, and now I can specify a breakpoint. For example, I want the object to break from here. So now if I select this, we can see that the rectangle now has it's broken into two different parts from this particular point. So that's what break command does. Two variants of the break command are there. The third command we are discussing is the command align. For that, I'm just going to have to create two different objects. One rectangle is this, the second rectangle, let me just make it suppose I have these two rectangles, and let me just kind of rotate it so I can realign it later. Suppose I have these two rectangles and I want this rectangle to be aligned with this particular rectangle. What I'll do is I'll just use the command align. You can type in the command or you can just select it from here. It's asking me to select the objects. I'm going to select these two objects and press enter. It's asking me to specify the first source point. That means it's asking me to specify the points where I want them to be. So I want this point to be aligned with this point, and this point to be aligned with this point. And I'm just going to press enter. Now it's asking me to scale the object on the basis of the alignment points, because obviously the length of this line and the length of this line, alternatively the distance between these 2 points and these 2 points is fairly different. So if I just select no and press enter, it's just going to align my object like this. Alternatively, if I just if I select yes, for an example, if I just use the command again, align, and if I just press enter, and it's asking me whether to scale, and this time if I select yes, then my object would be scaled like this. So presently I'm selecting both my objects. If I just select one of them, for example, I just rotate this one again, like this, and while using the command align, I just use one particular object and click on enter. It's asking me to specify the points. I specify them again and I press enter. It's asking me whether to scale. I'm going to say no, and now it is aligned to these, align my object to this particular object over here. Obviously you can, instead of using the command align, you can just use the command rotate and move, but sometimes that's a pretty lengthy process. For example, if I just want to align my axis, and instead of this point, I'm just going to select these 2 points for now. Let me see what it does, and I press enter. It's asking me whether to scale. I'm going to say no. So it just aligned my object like this. So that's how the align command is used. I hope you understood the commands align, lengthen, break, and obviously we discussed the command array in this particular video. So thank you for watching and keep practicing.